Hello there, and welcome to my little arty corner of the internet. It's Friday the 22nd of October, we're still in 2021, and it's a lovely sunny day here. And naturally that means I've woken up with a headache. I've got a terribly sniffy runny nose thanks to allergies and the change of season, and a ringing in my ears that I've had for a couple of days. And I think that's something to do with the menopause rather than anything else. It happens, it comes and it goes, just like the other symptoms. You know, it was menopause, International Menopause Day a couple of days ago, and there were plenty of lists of symptoms of menopause and perimenopause, and I'm going, yeah, I can tick a lot of them off. So not through it yet, but every now and again it's sort of like it becomes noticeable and then it goes away again. So you just learn to go with the flow. Anyway, here I am. This is my little A5 sketchbook that I've been using for the Inktober challenge pattern, Inktober Tangle pattern challenge for this year. And I need to add some colour to this page because it's plain. So I thought I'd show you. I've got here a couple of colour-coded makeup brushes. I bought these on Amazon. There are tons of options available and they're a lot less inexpensive than the big brands, and they're exactly the same. But what they allow me to do is to add a teeny tiny amount of ink to the paper, and I do mean teeny tiny amount because they pick up a lot less ink than I often use this, which is a piece of cut and dry foam. It's sort of like got quite hard solid foam on one side and squishy soft foam on the other. I like the black side for adding ink because it picks up a fair amount and it gives a really smooth application. And the other side I've never got on with blending tools. And you're going to have to excuse my scuzzy piece of kitchen towel that I use for wiping pens off on and brushes and goodness knows what, but it does its job. I'm using distress inks because they're what I have. And I rarely use the distress oxide inks, yet I've got a full set of them up to the newest releases, from last year and this. And I rarely ever use them. I do want to add some of the new releases to my little sets of distress inks. I hope they do them in these little cubes because these are the perfect size. So here I've added some peeled paint, and it's the tiniest amount of ink, and it spreads and it just looks, it's just subtle enough for me. So let me close that up. I've got a tiny little metallic sort of like plant pot or bucket over there that I bought years ago. I think I bought it in IKEA donkeys years ago, and it's brilliant for keeping those in. And I do want to add a little hint of browny colours now then. I'm looking at my browns. I think I'm going to go with, I have a bit of a thing about Rusty Hinge, because Rusty Hinge is a rusty brown colour, but it's a nice warmish colour and it's not as dark and as necessarily as grungy as others, but it's enough. And because I'm adding this with a makeup sponge that's used for all browns, some other colours will show up, and I'm fine with that, to be honest. It adds to the variation and the grunginess and the aged and weathered look of this, which is what I want really. But it's just enough of a background colour. I particularly like using these if I'm going to be using water soluble media to add colour or shadow to my drawings, because as they lay less colour down, so it doesn't mix as much with the colours I add as if I'd use cut and dry or the traditional blending tools, which makes me very happy. I just want a bit more over there. Let me see if I can just pick some more up. think this brush may need a bit of a wash because it's becoming, perhaps it's just because this ink colour is particularly subtle. But you can see there's just a subtle hint of colour there now where there wasn't any before. I'm going to just pop these to one side because, oh, there we are, all away. Next job, find pencil case, glasses. You can see what I'm doing there, but for drawing I really need my glasses on. And that actually has worked really, really nicely. So what kind of pen will I use? I think I might use a uni pen. And excuse me a mo, because I am going to pop my heat tool on just to speed up the process of drying, and it also makes sure that the ink has got stuff in it. I'm not sure if it's glycerine or something else, but it's nice to use a little bit of heat just to help it to sink into the paper. And I found that my pens work better on it then. So it doesn't take much. Yes, it warps the paper a bit, but you know, I'm not bothered. Not bothered one little bit. So I'm going to do day 22 of my Inktober Tangles, or some of it. I most probably won't do it all because I spend a couple of hours a day on these at the moment, even though my attention does need to be elsewhere on my adorable dogs book. But I've not been well the last 2-3 days. I've had a really, really upset stomach a couple of days ago, and it left me feeling very delicate and out of sorts, and the discomfort didn't let me sleep easily at night. So I'm still tired, but I had a better night's sleep last night. So today's tangle is called, and this is where you get to see my really awful hand lettering, but you have to do it to practice it. And it's called Paradisum. With hand lettering, if I'd make it deliberately wibbly wobbly and all over the place, it looks like it's deliberate, rather than me just being particularly rubbish at it. I haven't done any for ages, and this is why by Oswaldo, let me get my other book because I've got a list of it in one of my journals. Oswaldo Burbano, who's a CZT, and it's a lovely floral tangle pattern, which will be interesting to do. I'm looking for it in my notes. Oh, there it is, because I did make a note of these, and it's day 22, so I shall make a nice big 22 there, pop day there, and then later on in my leisure I'll come and put Inktober Tangles there, because that's what I've been doing on most of my pages. Look at the shape on that. Dear goodness, what a potch, eh? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to draw my way through this in my own inimitable style. Try to do it as was intended by Oswaldo, and then perhaps do a couple of variations with you before I go and lose myself in tangling for a while. So it's kind of like this, but there is a shape that goes like this, and there is also an aura aura that goes around the outside here. They call it an aura in Zentangle. I'm taking my time because, oh, it'd be nice if I could keep it a consistent width, but consistent widths and Angelas just don't go together. And the original has 2 little rice shapes, which I draw like a figure 8 because that's what I do, sort of one side than the other. And then they are again aura'd, like so, and like so, and that continues out to until they touch the edge of this area to enclose that lower bulby bit. It does look a bit like a bulb. I'm not happy with this up here, so I'm going to add another aura. There's something about it that just doesn't feel finished or complete in some way. I mean, that is to do with me rather than Oswaldo's lovely pattern. And I'm going to add some black bits there because I can. Okie dokes. So I've got some areas here that I can, in the original, this area here and here, they're left empty, so I'm going to do that. Although the version I've got has a couple of these in here, a bit like stamen, I suppose. I can't fit one around there because I've made it really narrow. And this here is coloured in black. I'm using a Unipin fine line pen, an 03 from Uniball. I like these a bit more than the Sakura Pigment because they're not as scratchy on the paper. But they're both wonderful pens. It's just whatever's to hand, whatever comes into my mitt that happens to be about the right size when I'm thurtling through my pencil case. And that there is essentially Paradisum. I'm going to let it dry before I do any shadowing, shading, whatever, and adding highlights and so on. I'm just going to do my little bits of, I think in Zentangle they call it rounding. I just like to give a bit of weight, thickness to the end, just to make the where lines connect, and that's it. And that's about it. I've also seen this done with the central bits being a lot more V-shaped, with things like this. It looks like the astrological symbol for Aries. I'll tell you what I'm doing that I think I need to alter. This is my thought process as I do things, is that I'm leaving quite a narrow space here, and if I want to put, pack patterns into it, then I really do need to leave a much bigger space there, but we'll see. I'm happy to let these join without going around the edge, and the same here is that I am going to aura this while I'm into this aura ring, echoing lines, repeating the lines, stacking them, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to add one of these shapes, which I often do on the end of curves, because I just think it finishes them off nicely. Rather than having a point, it's a safety thing. I sort of did it over here, but here I've done it in black, so you don't poke your eyes out. With this one, I'm going to put one big one in here, I think, and then I'm going to do it this way, because I reckon that'll be quite nice. And I'm going to put black stripes in here with a little highlight in the middle, leave a little gap there. Now I like to do mine as a little rectangular block, but I've seen people who do it and they leave sort of like a jaggedy edge there. Personal preference. I just prefer that rather neater, to my mind, look. I mean, the other one's got its charm, but unless I'm doing shading with a ballpoint pen, which I'm known to do from time to time. It's a big exploration of it not long ago. So it's the same idea here, same kind of shape, but instead of being U-shaped at the bottom, it's more V-shaped. It actually reminds me a bit of a jester's hat, if we'd cut it off there. You know, court jester's hat. Actually, that'd be fun, because you could add an extra one at the top, and it really would look like a jester's hat then. Especially if we kept it this kind of shape, I suppose. And perhaps brought the horns out a bit further down, actually, while I think about it. Let's have a go at that, is it? Oh, that one's going in a weird direction, but that's fine. And then there we go. Well, that's going to be interesting. How am I going to fit these rice shapes in? Well, I'll work that one out when I get to it. But that could be fun. Could be fun there, couldn't it? Could be. Just add some. I'll work that out in a moment. I think I may actually. Let's have a look. See, I've completely forgotten about the other one. And this happens because I know I can go back to that one, because in essence it's not complete, but it's getting there. So let's do this. I'm going to thicken those lines on this side as well, because I did this side trying to correct that curve where it's gone a bit lumpy bumpy, but that's fine. Oh, I've definitely got an egg shape there, but that's all right, because for now I'll turn it into that, and we can I say we can. It's the royal we. It means I can do this aura-ing. Now, I know that people find it a lot easier sometimes to do things like rotate their book or paper to draw, but I think I've been drawing for so long in big sketchbooks they're awkward to twist and turn to draw in, although I do, but I tend to keep mine relatively on a level as I do this. So I've added a kind of seed pod shape there, and I will fill this with seeds. Excuse me for sniffing. Between allergies and colder night air, I think. This is an interesting one because I've got weird things going on, but this is a sketchbook, so it's a way for me to just get ideas down and to try things. So I want to add patterns here. Now I could add, let's just keep it simple, and I think in the style of a court jester. Not that they had stripy horny hats, but I just think stripes. I'm not sure about stripes. This one I'm going to go like this. When I draw lines like this, I try to think about how they would go across something that's quite three-dimensional, how they would bend with that kind of shape. And of course this curvy line might help with that if I was in the mood for it to actually make these squares a little bit smaller. But what I'm going to do is find a slightly bigger nibbed pen, which I will have in here. That's no 2, that's no good. Got an 05. And very quickly, let me just ink some of these in the black and white checkerboard pattern. Very graphic, very simple. And if I'd made these squares smaller, it would really, really bring out the three-dimensional shape in a grid. In a very op-arty kind of way, I suppose. Let's have a look. So that one I'll leave blank, and I'll do this one down here. So I haven't got 2 black squares side by side, because that would be a bit of a faux pas, to say the least. Again, if I thought about it more, I'd have made these lines much closer together here. I mean, it would be easy for me to actually do that, because let's have a compare it with this one, where perhaps I have smaller lines and wider ones on this side, and see the effect. So that one's white, so if I go down diagonally, this one needs to be black. I feel awful, I sort of feel awful. I take liberties with people's tangle patterns, and have done all the way through this month. Day 22, so I've got 22 different tangle patterns with pages of what they call explorations in Zen Tangle speak. Sort of like used, like I'm doing here, is starting with the, oh gosh, look at that. That's okay, I can fill that one in. There we go. That's good. Does that enhance the curve a bit? I think it might do. Excuse me, I've got the tissue somewhere. I'm going to have to blow my nose. I apologise. But you're not going to edit this at all. So you'll have to put up with me and my complaining nose this morning. So that one is quite interesting, and I think I'm going to carry on this very graphic kind of feel here, because this was looking a bit left out and a bit plain in comparison. But yeah, instead of black and white squares, I'm just going to do that highlight again. Kind of highlight to give them that sense of curviness here, perhaps. And then on the outside edge, I'll take the finer pen and do some lines just to... And these lines are slightly curved, again, to give that idea that this is actually curving. If it was flat, these sort of like lines would be completely straight. Here I'm trying to curve them. My hand doesn't want to do it this morning. My fingers don't. I'm just going to put little dots in there just to help with that. So that one is all a bit different, isn't it? But I like it. I do like that. That one was fun. unexpected, but gestury hat type. And I think I'm going to add a couple of shapes that remind me of perhaps the stamen that you see in lilies, because I just think that's what would be there if you know. This may be a bad idea here, but it's going to happen, so because they look quite bare in comparison to the rest, but that can be fixed quite easily, I would think, by shadow and highlights. And if I'd use the thicker pen to draw them, perhaps. There we go. So that one's an interesting one. This one here, the original one, I need to just go back and let's have a look. How am I going to fill this in? I think I'm going to do like this. I think I'm going to do a variation on Shattuck, where those little triangles you get at the base of this pattern. I'm going to fill in with black, just to give it that almost structure, I suppose. And on these bigger areas, I'm going to try to make sure that they mirror each other, because that makes me happy, as it with number of lines and things. So, and then as I move down the horns of this floral pattern, because they do look like horns, I'm not going to be so fussy. So I think 2 would most probably do it for much of it. 2 lines and then the black area. And then it's so small, it's going to be just down to 1 line and that little bit of triangle. There we go. And then that last bit I'm just going to colour in black, because in fact I think I will up to there, because it was getting ridiculously small, it has to be said. So I'm just going to turn this. Say I don't turn the book very often, but I do, to make it that little bit easier for me to draw. Apart from this spiral binding, I waver between wanting sketchbooks that are like this and then sketchbooks that are bound separately. Though I do have a plan that I'm going to try with the A4 sketchbook I'm working in at the moment, to actually be able to remove the pages and put them back in without I'm not taking the binding apart. That'd be really daft, but I think I can do it, and use them then to store the pages together, because I do find it really awkward. I'll just take that one around and just fill that in, and that'll be fine there. Actually works quite nicely. Then with this, 1, 2, 3, 4, so we split this one that way and get a couple in of these as well. That works nicely because it's staggered with the one that's in the seed pod. so it doesn't look like it's actually part of the seed pod, that it's some other part. And that works quite nicely. Now then, so I have got a good couple of, that's an 02, I'm looking for an 01, or smaller, that's an 01, 2, and 3, so that must be the... These are pens that I discovered years ago and never really used very much. They're by Otto, and they are graphic pens. And instead of being fibre tips, they're actually roller balls, but they have got pigment ink in. That is, it is waterproof and light fast and archival. And it means that as long as I don't press too hard on them and press the ball up, that they actually last a lot longer than fibre pens will. I did have an issue with some of them years ago because they'd suddenly start leaking ink out through the rollerball, and I don't know why. But yeah, so I've got 3 variations here done. I'm not going to finish my page. You'll have to wait until tomorrow's sort of like look back on the week to see how I'm doing with that. Now I'm going to do this in true Zen Tangly style, where I'm going to add pencil shading. Excuse me. I'm going to sharpen this pencil a little bit. Pop it in the graphite side. Now these are pencils that are new, and they are new. They new, not just new to me, but new on the market, or relatively new on the market, and I only discovered them. They're called Pit Graphite Mats, and they're from Faber-Castell. And the clue to them is in the word matte, because graphite pencils irritate me when I use them, because they leave a shiny finish, especially over black ink, which means they dull it down and make it too awkward to photograph or scan in. So if I wanted to scan this in as a finished piece of work, it's never very good, because I wouldn't take a photograph if I was going to say put a finished piece of work on somewhere like Redbubble for sailors' prints and so on, because I haven't got photographic skills really, and so scanning in is the best way. And of course I'd want to scan in. My preferred way anyway would be to scan the black and white line drawing in, and then add shadow and what have you digitally, which I can still do even though I've got a colour background. Excuse the scratchy noise. It's one of these. So if you're using a paper stump or a tortillons are sort of like paper that's been tightly bound and spiraled into a point. Once the point goes flat like that, you can actually where is it? I'm looking here for my pokey stick thing. Oh, I can't find it. Can't see it. Thought I had it. Oh, yeah, there it is. A pointy cocktail stick. You just take a stick or something and you just poke it down, and if you get it in the right place, you can push that end out. You do have to hold on to it, especially if this gets stuck. You really could do with blunting this off actually. But you can actually renew the pointy bit and get a pointy tip. To clean, if the ends need cleaning, use this, which is what I do because I don't like them, sort of like clogged up with graphite. But anyway, so to go back to these pencils, these they are graphite pencils. They do blend out almost exactly the same as ordinary graphite pencils, drawing pencils. Any pencil you come across, unless it says otherwise, is going to be based on graphite, because that's how graphite, that's what pencils are made of. It's graphite bound with clay and, you know, and other stuff to make graphite harder than it is. Graphite is an incredibly soft mineral. It's a form of carbon, and it's shiny grey. It's absolutely lovely, and it looks metallic even though it is not a metal. And when you touch it, it actually feels really slippery in your fingers, and it's got the most amazing feel. How do I know this? I'm a science teacher, so I had access to all of these things, and we teach about the different forms of carbon and what have you to the pupils, and graphite was always one of the fun things that you could bring out for them to touch and feel. But it is shiny, and even in a pencil, the graphite is shiny. So when it's added to a picture and you either use it as it is, or particularly if you blend it out, the blending out makes it shinier, and that shininess appears. But with these matte pencils, that's not supposed to be the case. So much. There's still some shine, but it's a lot less. And I'm not sure if I pick it up. With this one, you can't see any shine at all. The only shine you can see there is me where I managed to drop some spit on there, but that can be sorted out. But you can see, and so these are absolutely fabulous. They're relatively inexpensive. I bought a set of 6 of them. I think they £12, or was it £8, something like that. So I bought the set of 6. There are bigger sets because they go all the way to a value of 14B, I think it is, which is incredible. But I bought the set to try and work out which hardness I like, because my days of using drawing pencils for drawing and sketching, it was usually a 2B and then a 4B if I wanted something that was a bit darker. I didn't like using anything other than that because you would get smudge fill, because I didn't know about paper tortillons then. To be able to help to push the graphite into the paper and smudge it out. But what I do as well is, if I was doing this on a bigger scale, or if I'm going to use this a lot, then I would use it. But there's no shine at all from the graphite pencil, and that's a 4B. And with an ordinary 4B, there would be a lot of shine. So take it from me, I'm happy, and they work nicely. There is another brand, so this is what they are, the Pick Graphites. And Staedtler have these, which are Mars Lumograph Black. I'm sure that these have got both have got carbon in them, which will dull the graphite down in some way. These certainly do, but they've got a waxier feel to them, and they don't seem to blend quite as easily as these do. So I got them out of interest, and I'm sure I will have use for them. But these ones are the ones that I tend to go for, and I'm trying to work out, as I've said, which hardness I like. So these are so it's working out really nicely. Just thought I'd like to share that with you. By the way, I say in my description, and I'll say it here, I haven't been gifted these. I've bought them, my own money. I saw them on a YouTube channel. I did share that on my blog, because I mentioned this in a blog post the other day. And because I know that I'm sure there are other people who get irked by the shininess of graphite pencils, just as I do, the shininess of the graphite. But these work really nicely, and certainly the lower you know, numbers, you know, like 4B, 2B, they do blend an awful lot like ordinary graphite pencils. The higher number, again, they feel that little bit waxier, a bit different. They blend, but not as nicely as, you know, traditional graphite pencils would do. These blend nicely enough. They're adequate, you know, in that kind of way. They're more than adequate, actually. They work. So for this one, I'm just adding shadow on the backgrounds just to lift this up off the paper, hopefully just that little bit. So there's some sense there. And then I'm going to add some down the side here. Inside this. Well, this is where I could really do. Where's my phone pinging? That was the email somewhere for me. Great. There we go. And then I'm going to pop some each side of these little arches, just to help with that sense of and I'll leave that so you, I don't know, can you see any difference there? I mean, we're all not zoomed in very much, am I? Should we try zooming in? Shall I? When we can. There. That's a bit better, isn't it? Should have done that sooner. But yeah, you can see the difference it makes here. How much more volume it has. It's got that feeling that those really do curve up. The darker you make the shadows, more intense that illusion is. I try not to spread the graphite too far. I just try to push it in and even it out to a little bit. I don't, because I want to keep my shadows specifically in a place, so I can do that just with this. Now for a lot of my other pages, which you've seen some of if you've been here regularly, you'll know that I use colour as well, where I make the colour very intense, or as intense as I can get it, close to where I want the shadow. But these pencils actually work really nicely on the top of colour as well. So I can, you know, put a flat wash of colour down and then use graphite pencils to intensify shadows. But it all kind of works. So there we are. I'm going to leave that where it is for today, because I've talked at you for 42 minutes, so I'm showing you this. I hope it's given you a sort of like idea of how my mind works, which is basically in strange ways. Actually, I haven't put shadow on. Oh, let me do that for you before I do anything else. Oh, and I haven't done highlights. There's me about to go, and we haven't done any highlights, so I'm going to pop some shadows there. Look at that. I didn't put a line in there. It doesn't matter. So let's put some graphite in to these. Get my pointy tool out here. This is not a pointy or pokey tool. I know what it's called. It's a paper stump. But brain, non-functional still. Headache not gone. It's easing. The pills are working, so it's not a migraine. I think it's just sleeping awkwardly. Got those. And what I've got here, this is just a jelly roll pen, and I'm going to use my scuzzy bit of paper that I use to put underneath a page when I'm adding distress ink, just to keep it off any other pages, because I like grunge, but I'm not into huge amounts of grunge. And then I'm just going to add some highlights in places. Just to help to bring out. Now I could draw this on as a line, but I'm not a fan of white lines, as in solid white lines. It doesn't feel right to me on my drawings. I am going to put some white in there. Do you know what? I may take it over there and over there just to cover up that. That looks a bit better. And I will pop some on there. Perhaps some on side some of these. Yeah, I won't mind too much if they go over the line because it breaks the line up a bit and makes that sparkle or shine appear to be more of a shine. And then on these, I'm going to dot around the highest parts just to give that sense of again the highlights, and pop some down there. I'm not a fan of white chalk, which I know is the Zentangle way, but I'm not a fan. Let's just leave it at that, is it? And yeah, I'm just going to add little white dots and perhaps some across here, because that's quite a big arc. And this one I may as well add some white in there. I'm trying not to obscure the black lines, just give a thin line of white, because that will bring the highlights out. So there we are. There you are. I was going to finish, but I've now finished on these anyway. So there will be others, and no doubt I'll finish. I'm likely to leave that as it is, actually, as a sort of like an example to myself, the difference that shading does make, even subtle shading, relatively subtle. But I am going to end up filling this page in with other variations of Paradisum, and I've got to put some stems on them. They've got to be my kind of pipey, weird, architecturally, mechanically, I suppose, stuff. You know, I'm going to spend another couple of hours today on this while I continue to recover from my bout of sickness this week. And yeah, I'm feeling fine. I'm just tired, and my brain isn't really with it, and this ringing in my ears is driving me nuts a bit. So I'll be, you know, I'm starting to sketch. Starting to sketch stuff and get stuff together for ideas and references and all goodness knows what for the adorable dogs. Already got tons of them, and I need to do some of that. But anyway, I'm wittering. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed a look into me and a little bit of what I do for the Inktober Tangles and these explorations. Tomorrow's Saturday, which means it's a sketchbook flip through, and a warning in advance, it's going to be a biggie because I have done a lot of drawing this week. Not just Inktober Tangles, but other things as well. I've had, pens to try out, and I've had quiet time I've needed because I've not been feeling too well, and just sitting and drawing. So there's going to be some bizarre things, no doubt, but perhaps not bizarre is the wrong word, quirky, Angela. So thank you so much. That's for tomorrow, and please, until then, until I see you next time, take care of yourself, look after yourself, and find time to be creative. Bye bye for now. Bye.